You're wrong about how we draw dinosaurs. Not the scientists, not the paleo artists, you. If a paleo artist who had gone their entire life without seeing a swan or a goose or something like that was provided that swan skeleton, they wouldn't end up with something like this at all. They would probably draw something closer to this than what an actual swan looks like. But in paleontology, we have a variety of techniques that we use to prevent our reconstructions from being this off the mark. And because of those techniques, we can know that our dinosaur illustrations shouldn't look like this. First, let's talk about what we can just get from the bones. The muscle attachments in basically every group of tetrapods, which are things that walk on land with four legs, are pretty similar. So we know where dinosaur muscles go in and out of, and we know how large they are due to the amount of scarring they leave on the bones. In terms of what goes from the bone to the surface, there are actually areas of bone that can tell you that they were sitting closer to the surface than others. See how the bone on this horse's skull is entirely smooth, whereas the bone on the skull roof of this alligator and this monitor lizard are much rougher. That rugose bone supports keratin layers that sit much closer to it, meaning that that bone is probably right on the edge of the skin. Sometimes bone is literally on the surface of the skin, like in the case of osteoderms of crocodiles and alligators. Bones can only tell us a little bit about how internal organs were structured, though, which is why we're fortunate to have fossilized internal organs like the ones in this Brachylophosaurus. Obviously, they're rarer than bones because it takes a lot less to destroy or decompose an organ than it does a bone. But they do still fossilize, and from what we can tell, we were already pretty on the money when it comes to understanding what a dinosaur's innards would look like, and in most cases, they seem pretty close to modern birds with a few modifications. Last but not least, some dinosaur fossils do include skin, and from that we can tell what kinds and shapes of scales these certain species would have had, and in cases where that skin is super well preserved, we can even look at the color. And that applies to feathers too. You can see there's those little fossilized feathers on the back of the Psittacosaurus's tail, and they sit right there on this model, which is gorgeous and represents, down to that little dark patch surrounding the cloaca, the actual colors that Psittacosaurus would have had in life. So yeah, the people who think that paleo artists are just doing this and pulling stuff out of their butt are really, really wrong. And to be honest, I'm probably not going to stop being bitter about it. I have spent over 12 hours drawing this. That doesn't count the papers that I've read, the research that I've done, and all of the reference searching. So I promise you, as someone who does this for a living, we are not just guessing. It is not the 1800s anymore. And if someone tells me my stuff is shrink wrapped again, I'm gonna start throwing things.